Hey guys, it's Scott Payne from PM Master Prep, and in this video, I'm going to teach you the 6 styles of PMP questions, and I'm going to give you focused strategies to attack each type. Look, the reason why I'm here is to help you get the highest PMP score possible. I want above target across the board, every single one of you. And in this video, I'm going to teach you focused step-by-step strategies that are going to help you score above target. So let's get started. All right, so we all know the PMP exam is 200 question and it's A to D. You have multiple choices, right? And now what most people don't realize is that there are different types of questions on the exam. They're not all the same, right? Okay, so I'm going to teach you the 6 types. So to go through them, there are situational questions, and these are the kind that you need to be prepared before you get into the exam. You don't want to walk in and go, oh goodness, there's situational questions, because they can throw you off. They can really eat up a ton of your time. We need to find a way to get strong at them now. We believe before the test so we can succeed in the test, okay? That's the whole focus of this PMP Master Prep training, is to prepare you for these type of questions. I got you. I got you covered in this neighborhood. All right, so the next time is interpretation questions. These aren't exactly like situational, but they're a little bit close, and they require a deeper knowledge, not just memorization. Remember, we are not PMP memorizers. We are PMP learners. So we're going to prepare ourselves for interpretation questions. I'm going to teach you how to do that. Then there are formula-based questions. Whether they're EVM or other types, we have a solution for that. I have a guided template. It's very logical. It cuts down the process. It makes it super easy, and you're going to be able to solve every single EVM problem. In fact, you're going to wish every single problem was EVM, but it's not. But when you get them, you'll nail them quickly. All right, so then there's definition questions. These aren't as often used, but they're on there, and we have a strategy. The strategy is not to memorize. It's to learn in a certain way so that when you get these, you eat them right up, all right? Okay, then the last one are knowledge questions. We're going to go through the strategy for how to prepare and how to excel on these. And the last are the ethics and professional conduct. Now, these are very important to me and to PMI. We must operate with the highest ethics out there. We're leading projects in our companies, in our countries, outside. We need to operate with the highest ethics, and there's questions on there that make us prove that we are living up to the standard that PMI sets. So let's go through each one of them. We'll start with situational. All right, so situational, what are we talking about here? These are the questions that pose real life or life-like project management situations. These are longer form, 2-3 sentences or more, and they paint a picture and put you in a spot and ask you those 7 beautiful words. What should you do next? What would the project manager do next? And then they lay out a bunch of different answers that are all different choose your own paths in a sense, right? Ways to react to the situation. And so these, if you only had a couple of these, you could spend a lot of time on them. But there's a lot of them in the exam. And so you got to be able to think quickly. You got to have a deep understanding of the PMBOK knowledge. You got to have a deep understanding of how to answer situational questions. And you got to have a deep understanding of how to make decisions, value-based decisions, one answer versus another answer. Because the thing is, with these 4 answers, let's look at this question, right? So it's saying you're a new project manager and you've been assigned to estimate a project cost. And then it lays out, you go to a senior project manager who's been working for a certain amount of time. He advises you to do something that you think is a little different. And then it says, what should you do? So it lays out different options. Each of them could possibly be valid. You could say, yeah, I could possibly do that. That could be right. And if you just went from A and you said, hey, if this seems right, I'm going to answer it correctly, you're most likely going to get these questions wrong. What you must do is you must evaluate, hey, what are the best options? None of them are perfect. All of them are possibly right, but you have to have the best one. So you're going to always find in these situations 2 answers that are almost right. And it's going to be balancing. You're going to be flipping coins, half and half. But you're going to have to choose the best one. And the way in which we prepare ourselves is we really grind down on our knowledge as far as the PMBOK, what the PMBOK says. We must ask why as we go through and understand what their recommendations are for how to handle situations. We're going to have to infer that. All right, so the way in which we can get through this, that's how we prepare for these, but how we answer them in the exam is a little different. That's a lot of words. Let's just think through logically. Look, there's a lot of sentences here. And then the answers are pretty lengthy as well. So what we want to do in these situations is we start with the last sentence. Hey, what should you do? Okay, so it's framing us that that's the kind of situation that we want to get into. That's what we need to read for. What are we doing next? Then we read the answers, and it presents the options. So we only have 4 ways to go. Now we need to go back to the base, the regular question, the meat of it, and say, hey, what facts do I have? I already know what they want me to weigh my opinion on. I know what my options are, A through D. And now I go through the facts. And as you're reading them, by doing it this way, you'll go through the facts and it'll start to make more sense. B and C are my options. I need to weigh between those. And what are the positives and negatives of each? And which one is the best, quote unquote, best answer? And that's what you're answering. So we want to focus on the end, last sentence, focus on the answers, and then go back to the meat of the question, read through it, try to interpret the answer, and choose the best possible answer. Now, what is the best? The only way we're going to get good at this is if we do a lot of situational questions. And that's the beauty of the simulator. Tons of situational questions so you can try your hand choosing that best answer and asking, why was that the best answer? Or why did I choose the wrong answer? So we got to bleed, like we said, before we get into the exam. So let's do this. The next type is interpretation. You might ask, hey, what's the difference between situational and interpretational? Situational puts you in a situation and say, hey, how would you react? In the interpretation questions, it's saying, hey, this is how would you interpret this situation? I know I just used the definition to define it, but let's look at the example. Your project has a CPI value greater than 1. What does this indicate? And there could be some more depth in there to say, hey, the project manager or the project sponsor asked you for a report or an interpretation of this. What does this indicate? And so you're going to have to rely on your basic information. You got to go back to the basics and say, hey, regardless of the situation, whatever they're trying to confuse me with, if there's a problem or customer issues or a change request out there, and they're asking you, what does the CPI value mean? You got to let all that stuff evaporate. You got to go back to basics. You got to focus on the definition, on the facts given, and then you got to interpret that actual value. So in this situation, a value greater than 1, well, given the answers here, that means that the actual costs are less than the earned value. Now, you won't know that if you haven't started studying yet, but we're going back to the basics, back to the facts. There's often graphs or performance metrics in these situations, and we want to interpret the values from there. So these are a little bit different. You're going to see a good amount of these on the exam. We prepare ourselves, and we'll show you how in a little bit. So formula questions. Now, a predominant number of these are EVM questions, earned value management, and these require a lot of formulas. So they're going to give you a situation, they'll give you a graph and ask you to calculate values. So the challenge to you or to the world is, how do I remember all these equations? Now, there's not a ton of these. There's only going to be like 5 or 8 of these formula-based questions on the exam. So that's like 2.5 to 4% of your exam, but they're important and they can cause you a lot of stress. So what we want to do is we want to have an easy way to remember all the equations and a process to use the equations so that you can solve them. Now, that would be great, right? Now, before my methods, there wasn't anything. There's just, hey, memorize all these equations and hope you can get them right and work on your data NUP and all those other things during the exam. So that's going to take a lot of time and there's a lot of risk in doing that. So what we're going to show you in this course is a very simple, methodical, and logical EVM template that I'll show you that you don't have to memorize. You're just going to learn it, how to structure all the equations so that when you walk into the exam, the first thing you do is you open up your notebook, you write down this template, and you have it. So that's going to be your proof. And you know that every time you use that template, because you've practiced, you're going to get every EVM question right. So anything they ask you, you just fill into the template. Use the basic process that we teach you. It's all guided. Anybody could solve it, and you get the right answer every time. So you're going to look forward to these formula questions, and normally they cause people to shake and sweat and worry and waste a bunch of times. You're going to be prepared, and you're going to solve them. So we've got to memorize, or not memorize, but we've got to learn the EVM template and how to use it, and that's going to help you crack all of these questions. So the next time is definition. These aren't the most common questions on there, but they are easy to answer. All right, so definition questions ask you to select the correct name for a concept, a tool, a process, a definition, something in there. It's asking you just to name it. And they're the simplest type. They often could include the words like is known as, something is known as something else, right? And so that requires you to have a deeper knowledge. So if you thought to yourself, well, how would I get this deep knowledge? There's like two paths. Either I memorize or I learn the information so that I know it so well that I don't have to cram my brain trying to crazily memorize, but I know it and I can use it, right? So I have a broken record on this. I am an anti-memorization guy. I do not want you guys to memorize. I want you guys to learn so that you can be prepared for these in anything that's being asked on the exam. So the way in which we do that, and we learn deeply, is that while you're studying, while you're asking yourself, about questions, and while you're watching these videos, I want you to ask yourself why all the time. Why are we doing this process? What is the purpose of this process? Why are we using this tool? And so if you think about the question of why are we doing this process, it reformats how you think about things. Instead of memorizing, I must know all the inputs, I must know all the outputs, I must know all the tools and techniques. Instead it says, why is the project manager spending time doing this? And if you can understand they're trying to produce this output, because that benefits us in a certain way and I need that to move forward, then you go, okay, I understand why we're doing this. And then you can ask yourself, that would be an output. Then you say, well, what would I need? What would I need to do this? And that's the inputs. That's what inputs are. What would I need to do to produce this output? And then when you have like a factory, our raw materials are inputs, what I need to produce is our outputs. Then the machines that convert is the tools and techniques. So it all starts with why are we doing it? And by doing that process, the why, and going deep into that, you're going to start to find different inputs and outputs, which are the definitions that you're going to be asked, that's going to require you to go, I wonder why we need that input. Or I wonder why that output's being produced to give that the reason why we produce this process. And so when you go down and dive deep into those things, then there you're going to learn those definitions. So by learning that way, you're learning for situational questions and you're also learning the detailed definitions. Because if you just try to memorize, you're just going to get a cursory top line level. You're not going to get the deeper understanding of the actual definition. So that's the most important thing that we want to go through, always asking why. It prepares us for definition, situational, all these types of questions. All right. As we move forward, these knowledge questions test your understanding of foundational PMBOK guide structure and project management concepts. So a little like definitions, but a little different. And so this is to test your factual knowledge of like process groups, knowledge areas, and process components. So it's more of vernacular, structure, those type of things. And so the way in which we want to prepare ourselves for that, so that we just don't waste any time memorizing, we actually use the process to learn, is every time we answer a question using the simulator and the path that you're going to follow through in this exam, you're going to ask yourself, the first question is, where am I in this situation, in this question? Where am I? And then you're going to see in your mind the process groups across the top, the knowledge areas across the side. And I want you to see one of the areas, one of the blocks, one of the places light up to say, hey, I'm in monitoring and controlling right now. And then once you know where I am, then you ask yourself what should be done and what should be done next. And so by doing that, you're questioning your understanding. And every time you drop yourself into that map, that tool, that side-by-side of knowledge areas and process group, you're questioning, do I have a deep understanding of where I am right now? And if you don't have a deep understanding, then you have two paths, right? You can be scared to say, I don't know, let me move forward to somewhere I feel more comfortable. Or you can embrace the insecurity and you can say, I want to learn about this right now. Like, I can't beat this hard enough. Learn. No, memorizing, okay? So when you drop yourself in and said, where am I right now? See yourself dropping in using a parachute or something. And you say, where am I? Do I understand? Why am I doing this? So when you get these knowledge questions, then you're going to be able to excel on them. They're going to ask you what knowledge areas the project charter developed in. Then you go, man, I see myself dropping into the integration management knowledge area. Very, very simple. Everything we do to prepare while we study prepares us for these exam questions. Why else would we study? We're preparing for the exam. So we have to prepare in a way that prepares us to succeed. That's the beauty of it, right? All right, so the last type are super, super important. These are the ethics and professional conduct questions. Now, these test your ability to follow the PMI's Code of Ethics and Professional Conduct. And really, there are 4 foundational values that PMI promotes. They're responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty. Now, this is very, very serious, guys. All right, so we never, in these questions, want to compromise any legal or any regulatory requirements. That's pretty obvious, right? So we don't want to do that. We want to consider the cultural, societal, and country-based norms in any question. We don't want to violate any laws or any reasons, anything like that, but we have to respect the cultural norms. So these are a little bit more difficult, but you want to side toward a respectful, responsible, fairness, and honesty policy. So those are your North Stars that lead you through these questions. Okay? And so these are very important questions. These are not difficult, but they require you to focus on things in a different way. So you're going to be prepared to answer these, and you're going to get them all right. Okay, so that code of ethics that I talked about, it defines aspirational and mandatory standards that PMI members and certification holders must uphold. So these mandatory standards they talk about, like these are ones like in our regular lives that if we violate these, we could be removed from PMI and membership, right? And we should be, right? If we're violating laws, if we're breaking laws, if we're doing things that are not honorable, we should be removed. And so that's the standards that we want to live by. And so the PMI will test these on the exam. Not a ton of questions, but there are questions on there. Like we said, the 4 core values: responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty. And it tells, you ask yourself, is this a mandatory or an aspirational standard? And so mandatory are the firm things. Aspirational does not mean optional. It just means they are pushing toward these 4 core values that we want to go for. And so we want to focus our attention on that when we answer these questions. What are the 4 goals? What is mandatory? Let's use our moral compass and our PMI ethics compass to answer these questions. All right. So we've covered a ton. We covered the 6 types of questions and strategies to go each. Now I want to give you the secret to get more questions right. Like we said, your study approach matters. How you approach studying matters on how many questions you get right. If you take one path, you get less right. If you take the other path, you get more right. You're going to spend the same amount of time, but you're going to get more questions right. So you might ask, what is that approach that's going to help me get more questions right? I've illuminated a lot of the points while I study or as I walked you through it, but I want to go through them in detail right now. So as you study, as you go through these videos, as you go through reading my book, the PMP book that I wrote, and as you go through all the simulated questions, you want to ask yourself 2 questions throughout your study process. The first question is why? Why? So every time you study a process, you want to ask yourself, why are we doing this? What is the output we try to get? What will we need on the input to deliver that output? And what the tools and techniques do we need to transfer inputs to output? So it all starts with why. That cascades a bunch of questions that help us learn more. Every time you do that, you're going to keep filling up your knowledge reservoirs, and you're going to be ready to roll on the exam. So start with why. I implore you, please. And the next thing is, every time you answer a question, ask yourself, what would the project manager do next? Start to question yourself. Give yourself free rein to experiment and say, hey, I'm in this situation. What would I do next? What would PMI say I'd do next? And by doing that, you're going to start building that muscle inside of you that you can answer any question that PMI throws at you. And you'll be able to say, hey, man, I ask myself what the project manager do next every single day. And so I'm ready when they ask me on the exam. And that's a good thing. And then every time you answer an exam on the simulator and in the exam, the actual exam, I want you to say, where am I? See that little guy with a parachute? Whoop, pop in to your process group first knowledge area map. Where you are matters. It matters on what should be done and what's be done next. And so if you don't pop yourself in, you're not going to have the right situational awareness to answer the question. So always practice that. Where am I? And then ask yourself, do I have a deep, deep understanding of where I am now? And if not, face facts. Go deeper. Get that deeper understanding. That's why I'm here. That's why my coaches are here. That's why this material's here. That's why my book's there. That's why the simulator's there. It's all there to help you. So you got a network, a community. We're all here to help you. And so let's just do this. Let's find out where we are, what we know, and get better all the time. And so what should be done? When I get there, when I land on the ground, I'm in monitoring and controlling. I'm in the quality section. Then I want to know what should be done up to this point. All right. So that's just another way to question yourself to see where you are and what you know, so that when you're ready for all these different types of questions. Okay. So the last thing is we have to master the EVM template. All right. And I have a course inside of here. It's a mini course that teaches you how to master the EVM template and teaches you how to understand and solve every EVM problem. So that's mandatory. You got to go through that. It's really going to help you out, and it's going to save a ton of study time and make you get every EVM question right. And that is a gift. Let's do it. And so the last thing I want to remember is this right here. Read the last line first. A lot of times, and a lot of you out there can gain a lot by reading the last question first. A lot of you get lost in the question as you read. So let's focus on what we need to answer. We read the last line, we read the answers, then we go back to the base and look for our facts. Let the facts drive us. So if we can prepare ourselves in this way, then you're going to walk into the exam, you're going to walk yourself confident and with a direction and with the understanding of how to crack every single type of question, so that when you get them, you're going to float right through and you're going to succeed. I want above target. I said it every single time. I want above target for all of you. And if you follow this class, you will get it. All right. So the next thing I want you to do is, as we go through this process, as you continue to take videos or watch videos, study, read my book, etc., I want you to follow the PMP Master Prep study plan. This is a study plan that has been developed through trial and error. We have actual students going through this for a long time, finding the best way. We want just-in-time learning. As soon as you learn something, go to the simulator, take the specific quiz, get the feedback on what you know, what you don't know, then use the tools. If you haven't been in the PM1 view yet, man, you are missing out. The PM1 view is the quickest way to learn. Once you miss a question on the simulator, you write the information down, go to the PM1 view, study that information, and get better faster. So follow our process, follow the methods that we defined in here, and let's get every question right. So above target for you, send me an email when you do it. All right, let's rule the next video. Love talking to you.